the first thing he says to me is, "Welcome, the beautiful actor." And I was just like, oh, you would insert a clove of garlic into the vagina, and then you would smell your breath. If your breath smelt like garlic, it meant that this is my mission. This is what I meant to do in the world. You are very strong on the outside, but you are very sensitive on the inside. And then he says, you are afraid of repeating the suffering of your mother. We have so much to dig into today with part 3 of this Egypt series. Only a small group of us went to actually see this second medicine man because there is the possibility that he could tell you something you don't want to know or upsetting to you, and he's not going to hold back. I don't know what it's going to be like to live on a boat for 4.5, 5 days. And I'm just like crying and I'm looking at him and I'm like, I'm already doing that. Like, this is the work that I'm doing. Like many psychedelics, a lot of people are just in it for the trip. People will have these kind of profound visions, and it's really known to put you in contact with your ancestors, seeing your life sort of in review. For anyone who wants to know their deepest truth, what you need to do is... What's up, guys? Welcome back to the podcast. We have so much to dig into today with part 3 of this Egypt series. We're going to talk all about the medicine man, the tree of life, the wealth and wisdom temple, shadow work with goddess Sekhmet, Egyptian lessons in sales, and so much more. So the first thing that I wanted to dig into was, I wanted to describe the boat that we sailed on the Nile River a little bit more, because I talked about it a little bit in part 1, but I didn't really describe to you the whole experience. So the boat that we were traveling on was called a dahabeya, and the word dahabeya is derived from the Arab word for gold, which kind of highlights this, ancient royal origin of these boats. And so they're like these wooden sailboats, and they have 2 decks to them with a really shallow bottom. And they've been used by travelers on the Nile since the 19th century and are based on designs that go back millennia. So there's a lot of history with these boats, but the one that we were on was actually so nice. The decor, the vibes, like maybe you saw some of it in my stories, but it was like everything was so curated and so beautiful and so aesthetic. And it kind of felt like the decor was really kind of like giving Ibiza sort of vibes, but it was just, they thought of every single detail. Like, truly, all of the furniture, all of the dishes, everything that our food was served in. There were so many beautiful, like unique ceramic pieces, and every area of the boat was like decorated to perfection. They had this kind of like a library area off the back of the boat. And so there were these big glass doors that would open up to kind of like a bay where you could sit out on these benches and look out on the water as you were sailing. But it was also connected to this little like library room that had these beautiful like cushions and this really like low table that we did the water ceremony there, and these bookshelves, and even just the books that were on the bookshelf. Like, I was looking at the bookshelf and I was like, oh my gosh, The Alchemist. And there was all these cool books about like Egyptian magic. And then there was a little like coffee station and place where you could like make tea and a kettle, and like everything was just so well thought out and beautiful. And the top deck was this really big sun deck. So there was tons of chairs and beautiful like sunbeds that you could lay out on up there. And the rooms were honestly amazing. I was like, I don't know what it's going to be like to live on a boat for 4.5, 5 days, but I was a little bit concerned. But the rooms were so nice. They were spacious. We each had a shower and a bathroom and they were nice. Like, it was it was bougie. This boat was bougie, but it was really fun. So you had like the top sun deck, and then you had the kind of like main floor where there was like a bar area where they would serve us coffee in the mornings. And then if you ever wanted to get any kind of like drinks or tea or anything, and there was all these beautiful seating areas. And then there was kind of like the center living area where there was couches and chairs, and we had the big dining table where we would have all of our meals. And then there was an area off the back where you could sit out and look at the water. And then there was this like spiral staircase going up to the very top deck for the sun deck, and then a staircase going down into like the belly or the bottom of the boat, which is where all of our rooms were. So all of our rooms were kind of like below deck, but you just walk down this really long hallway, and there's just rooms on every single side, and they were really nice. Like some of the rooms had like, they were single rooms with like queen beds, and some of them had even little like balconies almost like off the side, but you were basically like on the water at that point. And yeah, it was just like a really, really cool experience to travel and sail the Nile. There was also a lot of staff on the boat with us, so we were so well taken care of. Like there were people serving us like coffee and teas and drinks, and there was a chef and, you know, a whole staff and team of people on the boat with us at all times. And the food was incredible. Like the best food that we ate in Egypt was the food on the boat. The chef was honestly like, he deserves a Michelin star. It was so amazing. Our meals, we had like every single meal was like a 4 or 5 course meal. We had all these and it was a lot of like traditional like Egyptian foods and dishes that maybe we had never tried, but like everything was so delicious and healthy, and there was lots of fresh fruits. And then they would always make us these really amazing special kind of like unique desserts. Anyway, it was just incredible. That was like, I definitely recommend if you are going to Egypt, no matter how you're traveling, like consider doing a really nice dahabeya, because wow, that was just an amazing experience. Okay, so I mentioned the water ceremony. I'll tell you a little bit about what we got up to with that. So we each essentially brought water from a local source near our home. So people brought water from their rivers that they live near, or a lake nearby, or waterfalls. I brought water from the Atlantic Ocean from here in Florida. And then in this ceremony, we just kind of like honored and celebrated the element of water and its healing powers and how it connects us all on earth. And we shared why our local water was sacred and special to us. And this was actually a really extremely emotional ceremony. And it's kind of funny because when you think about like water signs in astrology, it's always like, you know, water signs are known for not only their intuition and psychic abilities and creativity, but also that like emotional element, very tapped into the emotions. So in this water ceremony, like we were all bawling our eyes out. The tissues were going around, like, and I wasn't expecting it to be that emotional, but it really was so sacred, so beautiful, so special. Like the stories that people were telling about where they come from and the water that they brought from their local sources and the gratitude connected to it and why it was special to them. And yeah, I don't know. It was just really, really beautiful. And so what we did was we combined all of our waters into this ceramic pitcher. So we all poured our little vials of our local water that we brought into this ceramic pitcher. And then we took turns kind of sitting off of the back of the boat and pouring that pitcher out and returning a splash of that mix of all of our local waters to the water of the Mother Nile. And then we said prayers for people in our lives that were unwell or that needed some extra healing energy. Some of the girls, you know, brought forward that they wanted us to pray for their family members or a couple of their fathers, some of their friends. And it was amazing because everyone that we ended up praying for somehow had kind of like reported in the next couple of days that they had made some sort of meaningful progress just a few days later. And so we all felt just really connected to the power of prayer in that moment because we were really, really intentional and we brought all of our energy forward to really help, you know, bring some healing energy to these people in our lives that needed it. And then some of those people like reported and they were like, oh my gosh, he's doing so much better, or, you know, ate his first meal, or, you know, made a lot of progress. And so, yeah, it just felt really nice to be reminded that like prayer really is so powerful and our energies do travel and they can reach people in our lives. So speaking of energy, we have to talk about the medicine man. So we actually went to see 2 Egyptian medicine men while we were in Egypt. I'm mainly going to talk about the second medicine man that we went to see. His name was Abdul. The first medicine man that we went to was also like a really lovely spiritual experience, and he did a third eye healing on me, and we all had an amazing time in his kind of like oil and perfume shop, and it was great. But this second medicine man that we went to was where I personally had a bit more of a profound experience, and we had a really amazing kind of like group session as well that I want to share some stuff with you guys from. So the second medicine man that we ended up going to was towards the end of the trip when we were already back in Cairo and we were doing our final visits to the pyramid and the Sphinx and then kind of like closing our time in Egypt. So this was at the end of the trip. We had already seen the first medicine man, and only a small group of us went to actually see this second medicine man because our guide Lara told us like, okay, this guy, he comes really highly recommended, but what you have to know about him is that he is very straightforward. He's a straight shooter. He's going to tell you like it is. Like, he's very honest. He has this commitment to truth, no matter what that is. So if there's something that he sees or feels or senses in your energy or in your health, like, he's going to let you know about it, and he's not going to hold back. And so there is the possibility that he could tell you something that maybe you don't want to know, or that maybe is upsetting to you. And so just, everybody use their own discretion of how you feel, and if you want to go to this medicine man or not. If you feel like it could throw you off or could ruin the rest of your trip, or if you're feeling really tender right now because of the experience in Egypt was very intense as it is. So it was like, if you don't want to go do this, like, that's totally fine. Just know that this is what you're signing up for if you do go and see this guy. And so not everybody went. There was like a smaller group of us that decided to go. And I'm so glad that I went. I was like, sign me up. I think this is part of my personality trait where it's like, if something is scary, or like it feels expansive or stretchy, or it's like an edge of a comfort zone, I'm like, yes, like, let's go. So of course I was like, raise my hand. I'm like, I'm signing up. Like, I'm definitely going. Tell me whatever it is you need to tell me. I'd rather know. So we went and we had an amazing session with him. He shared some pretty wild things with our group before he did individual like little mini readings on everyone. But we first started as a group, and he spent a lot of time with us, and he shared some pretty crazy things with our group. Like, he literally revealed the gender of Shoshana's baby because she's pregnant on this trip. She was in her, like, towards the end of her first trimester. So she hadn't tested yet at that point to know what the gender was, but he literally told her like, oh, this is the gender of your baby. So it'll be interesting to see if he was right once she actually finds out and kind of reveals that. So that was crazy. And he said it with such conviction. He was like, I definitely know for a fact that this is it. And then he also told Mel when she was going to conceive her second child, because she's in this journey of trying to conceive. And he told her when that was going to happen and what the gender of that future baby was going to be. And we were all just like, what the fuck? So again, it'll be interesting to see, like, if he was right and if that comes true. And then in our individual readings, he really just basically showed everyone some sort of blind spot, or where they were blocking themselves, or what they needed to shift, kind of revealing some energetic things, providing some wisdom and things to think about, essentially. So I'm going to read to you some of my notes from my actual reading with him. The reading was really short, but as soon as I was done, I opened my notes app and I was like, I want to write everything down that I can remember that he said, because I'm going to forget and I'm going to want to be able to reflect on this. So I was like, I don't know if I should read them this, but in my commitment to authenticity and transparency and sharing all the things with you guys, I'm literally just going to read to you my notes from my reading with the medicine man. So I go, over into like the back part of the shop and sit down with him privately to do the little reading. And I sit down, and the first thing he says to me is, he says, "Welcome, the beautiful actor." And I was just like, oh shit, okay. Why am I an actor? Like, fuck, rip me to shreds, Abdul. Here we go. So he's like, "Welcome, the beautiful actor." And then he explains, he's like, "You have two sides. You are very strong on the outside, but you are very sensitive on the inside." And I'm like, yep, okay, Cancer moon, that tracks. I am a sensitive girly on the inside, all the feels, ooey gooey heart. But, I have that fire sign, that Sag sun, the Virgo rising, that is, I feel like I give off this perception of being really like organized and having my shit together, and nothing's ever wrong, and I don't doubt myself. And like a part of that personality is definitely true. Like that is a version of me. But then there's also that sensitive side that he was talking about that is very, very in my feels. And like, I can definitely get my feelings hurt, and I can get really in my head. And like, I've been crying a lot on the podcast. You guys have seen, like, I can definitely be connected to those emotions. So I'm like, yes, okay, I'm understanding. And then he says, "You are afraid of repeating the suffering of your mother." Wow. Okay. That gives me something really deep to consider. He says, "You are afraid to depend on anyone, and you're afraid of being hurt, so you protect yourself by being extra strong and not fully trusting others. You are very good at assessing situations and studying everyone else, but you often feel like you know best." You need to release control and let everyone else discover for themselves and give other people the same right that you give to yourself. Give other people the right to make mistakes. Don't expect so much perfection from others or from yourself. And he talked a lot about how I'm really hard on myself. And he said, it's time to soften. He said, you are very helpful and extremely giving to those around you, but you are very, very hard on yourself. And that is also a shadow side of the Virgo element of my chart, which I know that about myself, and I have been working on it for a long time. So all of this, I'm like, okay, yes, listening, this is tracking. And then he says, you are too busy. And I said, girl, don't I know? He said, you're too busy. You are very high in mental, physical, and sexual energy, and you need to be more in your heart. And throughout the reading, he kept like literally taking my hands in his hands and placing them on my heart. He just kept saying, you need to be more in your heart. And he said, you need 1 hour per day of living for yourself from your heart. And he just kept emphasizing like living from my heart and opening my heart. Right? Which made me think about, if you listen to part 2, the key symbol that I received in my vision during my psychic reading before Egypt, where the key was like floating and coming to be placed on my heart. And the message that I received with that was open your heart. And that was supposed to be one of the messages that I was going to receive in my journey in Egypt. So after this reading, I was like connecting those dots and I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, it makes sense. Like I saw that in the vision. I heard that message. Like now I'm sitting here with Abdul and he's telling me that, like, it's all connecting. The medicine man is sitting right in front of me. A few hours, or maybe like we went to the jewelry store and I bought the Ankh, which is the key of life. So the key that I placed on my heart, that I received that message about opening my heart. And then right after we went to the jewelry store and I purchased that Ankh necklace, we went to the Abdul's perfume shop and started having these readings. So I was like, wow, that's fucking crazy that I literally just, connected those dots and got the key of life and put that key on my heart to remind myself of that message about opening my heart. And now I'm sitting and having this reading and he's saying like, open your heart, live from your heart, be in your heart. So wow. He said, you are a very beautiful woman inside and out with an important mission, but you need to live more in your heart. And you need to live more in your heart so that you can become the true medium and healer that you are. And I've been told many times throughout my life in different readings with mediums, with psychics, with people that tap into spirit guides. Like I've been told many, many times that I have psychic gifts, that I'm a medium, that I should work on cultivating them more. So that didn't really surprise me, but it was also nice to hear it from him. He said, you have so many codes, you have lots of wisdom to share. And then super casually, he just says, quote, you have lived many past lives and you were once a priestess of Hathor here in Egypt. And he just kind of like threw that in there in the middle of the rest of the things that he was saying. No pause after, no emphasis, just like casually dropped it in there. But as you can imagine, if you listened to part 2, my jaw was like on the floor when he said that, because this was the final piece of that whole like Hathor puzzle, the goddess that was waiting for me. Like, who was it? Like, is this what I think that it is? Like, that was the moment that connected all of the dots. And I just had such a profound knowing and a sense of truth in my body that I started crying. I just started crying and he was talking to me and I was just sitting there like nodding my head with tears rolling down. And he said, you're here to help women learn how to believe in themselves. And your soul's mission is to help women reach their highest potential. Which, going back to part 2, that is exactly what was on that Hathor oracle card that I received as well, about the, in modern day spirituality, the race of people that are considered the Hathors. They come from the stars and they incarnate on earth to help humans reach their highest potential. So he's saying all this to me and like, talking about how this is my mission and this is what I'm meant to do in the world. And I'm just like crying and I'm looking at him and I'm like, I'm already doing that. Like, this is the work that I'm doing. And he's like, I know. He literally looked at me. He's like, I know. Like, basically, like, don't you know? Like, I'm telling you, not because I want you to go do it, because I know you're doing it. Like, did you forget that I have this like ability right now? He's like, I know. I'm just reaffirming it for you. Like, I know, I can see that in you. So that was crazy. That was a wild ride, like the whole experience at his shop and just getting that reading and everything. But he was also like low-key dropping so many bars in our group session that we had before we went into those individual readings. And one of the girls actually took an audio recording of that whole session. So I'm going to share some clips from that with you now so that you can hear some of the highlights, but it was like an hour-long audio. So I'm just going to share a few tidbits with you. And first, you're going to hear him talking about the rules that we have to learn if we want to live out our mission in life.
If we want to do our mission, there is rules we have to learn. Very important rules. First rule is we shouldn't suffer for someone else. We should understand the suffering of the others without letting it be in our life. When you suffer for someone else, you cannot help. You yourself, you need help. Is that clear? You shouldn't decide for someone else. You should love people as they are, not as you want. You shouldn't experience their suffering and pain. But of course, the light slaves, they are good in making all the suffering spiritual to suffer for the others, to escape from their empty reality who they don't know how to work it out. Should I repeat that, or is it clear enough?
So as he says, rule number one is that you shouldn't suffer for others. You need to be able to understand people's suffering without taking it on as your own. And when you are busy suffering, you can't actually help. But light slaves are very good at making all of the suffering into something spiritual or morally superior so that they don't actually have to deal with their own empty realities. That's what he was talking about. And I think that, this is true of our interpersonal relationships and connections, like the people in our lives and not taking on their suffering, but also when it comes to the overconsumption of news and the constant stream of negativity and chaos and controversy, violence, and all this fear-based messaging that we are fed all the time. And I think so many people are addicted to watching, day in and day out, that type of content because they believe that it is the right thing to do. But I also think being overly informed about circumstances and tragedies and like on a daily basis, like all the time, is a sickness of its own. And it can really put you into a mental or emotional state where you can't even affect change or do your part because the suffering is too overwhelming. And so I think his point was essentially like when your energy is drained and you feel fearful and sad and heartbroken all the time, you cannot fulfill your mission in the world. And you can't be the wife, mother, sister, caretaker, friend, employee, or business owner that you were put here to be because you are taking on everyone else's suffering as your own and calling it spiritual or calling it moral or calling it the responsible thing to do. And that's not always the case. And so for a lot of people, that's kind of where you realize like, whoa, like I've become a light slave instead of a light worker. And I want to be really clear that this is not to say like turn a blind eye and stay ignorant and uninformed, but it's more about just, having an honest reflection with ourselves about if we are being overly informed to the point where it's affecting now our capacity to bring our light and our mission to the world. And might we be able to create more positive change, whether it's in the world at large or even just in what we can control of our own ecosystems, of our family and our communities, if we set some boundaries with that kind of stuff and we were more conscious about protecting our energy and not taking on the suffering of everyone around us, whether it's from the news or it's from, the people that are closest to you, like friends, family members, coworkers, and not taking on all of that stuff as our own all of the time. So this concept of the light slave versus the light worker is something that Abdul went into deeper for us as well. So I'm going to share that next.
It's very important to be a light worker and not a light slave. Light workers, the ones they understand spiritual energetic world very good. They understand material world very good. They have active personal life where they can receive their needs. Those they can channel lots of love, light, power, energy, talent, wisdom. They can do miracles. And light slaves, the ones they understand the spiritual energetic world very good, but they reject the material world. They don't know how to work their truth out. They don't know how to let go. They don't know how to receive. And they don't want to face all of that. They want to escape to look for their mission in life, how to serve and to help others. In that moment, they are turning themselves from light workers to light slaves. Try to remember that we cannot give what we don't have. You have to be number one for yourself so you can receive your needs, so you can do your mission in life. Otherwise, you will keep serving for the others all the time, and you will have less self-esteem, and this will make you a big problem later on. It's very important to be honest to yourself. If you cheat yourself, everyone else can cheat you. If you don't cheat yourself, no one can cheat you. You are the best who know what you like and what you don't like. You are the best who know what you can do and what you cannot do. You are the only one who know what you need and why.
Something interesting that he also shared with us was about the progression of consequences if you deny your truth as a feminine or masculine being, or if you are unable to love yourself. And so he kind of shared with us that what will happen is you will start serving everyone around you so that they can accept you. So essentially you become a people pleaser, right? Serving others in hopes of their approval, their satisfaction, their attention, which feels like love because that's what you're really craving, but it isn't actually real love. And then when you repeatedly abandon yourself, deny your truth, or choose to suffer in your body rather than finding a way to love yourself, he says the first few times, you'll be okay and the universe will give you a warning and then you'll have some time. But once you get to like that third time of where you receive the warning or the knowing and you keep pushing it down and ignoring it, then the suffering begins. And when you ignore the signs for too long, the suffering intensifies. And I think a lot of us have experienced this in our lives. If you have known something is not right for you, whether it's a job or relationship situation, something that you're in, and you're getting these signs that like it's not good and or you should leave, but you're like, nope, I can't, I don't trust myself, not now, not now. You keep pushing it. Sometimes those consequences get bigger and the suffering intensifies. And then he says, eventually you will go from a normal person to a masochist, meaning that you will start to get some sort of gratification out of your suffering. So essentially kind of having that victim mindset where you enjoy in a way being the victim or the underdog or the person who struggles or the person whose life is so hard or always has something to complain about. And then after that, you will become sick. You'll actually get physically ill if you still continue in this pattern of suffering without finally doing what you know that you need to do for yourself, honoring your truth, sharing your voice, like doing what you need to do, respecting your knowing of like what's right and what's not right for you and putting yourself in the right places. And then after that, after you become physically ill, you will eventually turn into a sadist, where you now actually derive pleasure from seeing or potentially even inflicting pain and suffering upon other people. And this could be emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually. But I think, a lot of us have seen people in the world where it's like, wow, they are so far into their own suffering that they've now become a danger to the people around them. They now are, like violent or abusive or whatever it is. Like you can see how it becomes sick, and people are very sick. And sometimes that is rooted in all of this ignoring of needs and ignoring of who they actually are, and, pushing things down and not listening and not following and not standing in their truth and not doing what they need to do for themselves. So that was kind of crazy to just see him paint that picture so clearly of what we know can happen and that progression of how things, the consequences of not honoring your truth. He also talked about balancing the yin and the yang and the importance of masculine and feminine energy, which was really cool to hear from, he was an older man. And like, I don't know, I think we think of these concepts sometimes as this like new age, like younger type of thing, but truly it is such ancient wisdom and knowledge. It's been around longer than anything else. And so it was interesting to hear his perspectives on that. And he said, when women are hurt emotionally, they become very good at using this fake fighter masculine energy to protect themselves from the love that they desire and they need. So if they experienced sexual trauma, or they grew up with a lonely mother as their example, or they had any other form of emotional pain, distrust of the masculine, trauma, etc., they can start to lie to themselves or cheat themselves, as he says, and you'll hear it in the clip, by using this fake masculine energy to protect themselves from needing to depend on anyone else. And then they'll go out into the world and they'll be disappointed head at the men that they're attracting, or they're start to say things like, love doesn't exist, or it's not real, or I can't find anybody, or there's no good people left. And it's because they are in that fake fighter masculine energy trying to attract romantic love, and they're completely out of balance with themselves. So you'll hear him talk about that in this clip.
All people understand what both energy in balance, feminine and masculine. And they forget something very important. Ladies, when they are hurt, emotional, they are good in cheating themselves and using fake masculine energy as a fighter to protect themselves from the love what they need. Should I repeat this?
Yeah, you should definitely.
Really? I have heard that so.
Like men, there is lots of men are good in using fake feminine energy because of their childhood, or because of sexual abuses issue, or because being supported from a lonely mother, being trained by a lonely mother, and they like to support their lonely mother, so they share it with their feminine energy till they become a feminine and a masculine body. But here I want to talk about the ladies when they are hurt, emotional, they are good in cheating themselves, and they use fake fighter masculine energy to protect themselves from the love what they need. Because they need love, but they don't want to depend on somebody else. They need love, but they don't want to be hurt again. They need love, but they don't want anyone to manipulate their life anymore. So all what they do is they use fake fighter energy to protect themselves, because they think that their feminine energy, beauty, body, magic, talent will make them weak again. So they don't want to be weak again. They shuttle this down, and always they say, I go out to search for love and I don't find love. Love doesn't exist anymore. Of course, love exists, but you are going out with a fake energy. The universal responding you, your energy pulling the type of people into your life.
And then he told us about the different types of energy vampires and who typically will suck the most energy from us. He says babies, elderly family members, ill people, and then the last ones are like energy robbers who intentionally steal your energy on purpose because they envy you and they want to copy you, but they don't actually want to learn from you. And oh man, did that one hit hard in a room full of digital entrepreneurs growing personal brands online. So you'll hear him talk about these energy vampires and energy robbers in this clip.
The ones they suck the energy, they suck our energy unconscious. 3, babies suck the energy. Very old family members suck the energy. Ill people and sick people suck the energy. And bad people wrap the energy, and the ones they wrap the energy consciously, because they want to copy you, but they don't want to learn from you. They envy you. Energy robbers.
And then the last thing that I'll share from our time with Abdul is he said, for anyone who wants to know their deepest truth in an hour or less, what you need to do is you need to answer these questions honestly in your journal. So if you want to jot these down, pause here or take a screenshot of where you're at in the episodes so that you can come back to it at some point. But I'm going to share the exact prompts that he gave for anyone who wants to know their deepest truth in under an hour. Answer these questions honestly with yourself in your journal.
How was your childhood? How was your relation with the parents? Who's from the parents was more on your side? What was the best time of freedom in your life? What was the worst time of freedom in your life? What was the best time of independence? What was the worst time of independence? What was the best time of personal security? What was the worst time of personal security? What was the best time of financial? What was the worst time of financial? How many person did you have sexually? How many relationship did you have? How many true love did you have? Who was the best love? Who was the worst love? Who was the best relation? Who was the worst relation? Who was the best person sexual? Who was the worst person sexual? What is your favorite sexual position? How many real friends do you have? And if there is a real friend or an ex-partner, turn to be an enemy.
So I want to share with you guys the 42 ideals of Ma'at. Ma'at is the goddess of truth, justice, divine order, cosmic order, and balance. And she's depicted with these wings of a vulture and the feather of truth in her headdress. And she also carries an ankh, which is the key of life, and sometimes a scepter. But the goddess Ma'at was really cherished by the rulers of ancient Egypt. And most rulers were actually even referred to as like beloved of Ma'at because of how much they adored her. So she was the personification of the cosmic order and a representation of the stability of the universe. Ma'at is almost always shown wearing the feather of truth on top of her head, and that feather came to be the hieroglyph Shu, which means truth. So according to the Book of Coming Forth, or also known as the Book of the Dead, every person would be judged before Ma'at to determine whether they were truly good and able to move on to the afterlife. And so the feather was weighed against their soul while they stated these 42 negative confessions. And if they had lived by the ideals of Ma'at and were truthful in their negative confessions, it is said that their heart would actually be as light as her feather. And that would mean that they were truthful and pure and worthy of passing on to the afterlife. So originally, the 42 ideals were actually these negative confessions. Things like, I have not committed sin. I have not closed my ears to truth. I have not used evil thoughts, words, or deeds. It's giving like 10 Commandments energy, right? All the things that you shouldn't do if you want to live in heaven or experience the afterlife, right? But in recent years, a list of these 42 positive ideals were actually written by a group of priestesses as a parallel or like a balance to the negative confessions. So they basically took the negative confessions and they translated them or transcribed them, turned them all into these positive ideals, which are essentially kind of like positive affirmations. So I'm going to read them for you because they're super quick and they're actually quite nice. Like I love the simplicity of them, but how just like honest and pure and true they are. And through our journey, Laura, our guide, was explaining to us, like, you can use these as a daily affirmation practice in the mornings if you are wanting to connect more with the energies of ancient Egypt, or if this just feels like a fun kind of like new ritual for you to utilize, then you can definitely use these 42 ideals of Ma'at as these kind of like positive affirmations. So I have them here and I'm going to read them for you. I honor virtue. I benefit and receive with gratitude. I am peaceful. I respect the property of others. I affirm that all life is sacred. I give offerings that are genuine. I live in truth. I regard all altars with respect. I speak with sincerity. I consume only my fair share. I offer words of good intent. I relate in peace. I honor all animals with reverence. I can be trusted. I care for the earth. I keep my own counsel. I speak positively of others. I remain in balance with my emotions. I am trustful in my relationships. I hold purity in high esteem. I spread joy. I do the best I can. I communicate with compassion. I listen to opposing opinions. I create harmony. I invoke laughter. I am open to love in various forms. I am forgiving. I am kind. I act respectfully of others. I am accepting. I follow my inner guidance. I converse with awareness. I do good. I give blessings. I keep the waters pure. I speak with good intent. I praise the goddess and the god. I am humble. I achieve with integrity. I advance through my own abilities. I embrace the all. I just love those. They're so beautiful and simple and pure. It's funny because we were learning about these ideals of Ma'at, and Mel actually has this tattoo where she has these Egyptian hieroglyphs like all down the back of her spine. And what it actually means, the hieroglyphs mean, I trust my inner guidance. And she got that tattoo like years ago. I think she said she was in Bali or something. And when she was getting the tattoo, she was thinking like, oh my gosh, am I going to regret this someday? Or am I going to find out that this means something totally different and it doesn't mean what I think that it means? But she decided to trust her inner guidance on getting that tattoo that, she believed at the time to mean, I trust my inner guidance. And so then when we were learning about these ideals, she was like, oh my God, like my tattoo is one of the ideals. Like, wouldn't it be crazy if it was number 32? Because that's her like personal lucky number. It's the number she's always been drawn to. She's like, since a little girl, without explanation, like very random number, but she's just always like 32 is her number. It's her lucky number. So when she realized that it was one of the ideals, she was like, oh my God, I need to like look at that sheet. I need to check like wouldn't it be crazy if it was number 32? It's number 32. Number 32. I follow my inner guidance. And we were just like, what the fuck? fuck? There are just so many moments like that, so many little stories of synchronicities and crazy things like that happened throughout our trip. So that was just a really fun one. Okay, next, I want to talk to you guys about some of the temples that we visited. So let's talk about Karnak Temple, where we met with goddess Sekhmet. This is the goddess of war, healing, and transformation. And she is the personification really of like shadow work, essentially. So when we went into this temple and we had our ceremony, many women that we were there with had intense experiences inside of her temple. And even one of the temple keepers was in there like audibly crying with us. It was just a very like moving, emotionally intense ceremony. So Sekhmet, her name means she who is powerful. She was a goddess of the hot desert sun, of plague, of chaos, of war and healing. And she was believed to be created from the fire of the sun god Ra's eye when he looked upon earth. And Ra created her as a weapon to destroy humans for their disobedience to him and for not living in accordance with the principles of Ma'at. So Sekhmet was depicted with the body of a woman and a lion head or a lioness head, and then she's kind of wearing this sun disk. And she was seen as the protector of the pharaohs, and she led them in warfare. And when she was in a calmer state, she would actually take the form of like a house cat that was known as Bastet. So Sekhmet was oftentimes kind of like seen as this terrifying goddess, but her friends like knew that she could avert plague and she could cure disease, and she was like the patron of physicians and healers. And so the ancient Egyptians believed that Sekhmet had a cure for every problem. And in order to stay on her good side, they would offer her food and drinks, and they would play music for her, and they would burn incense and do all these things. Because Sekhmet is a goddess that you don't really want to fuck with. Like, you want her to be on your side. So in our ceremony with Sekhmet, it was another one of our early wake ups. We woke up at 3 a.m. We entered the temple in complete darkness, and then we came out to the sunrise, which was kind of symbolic of the journey of this ceremony as well. But it was so hot inside of the temple. It was so cramped. We're in a really, really small room with a statue of Sekhmet in front of us. And, you know, Lara's like, okay, everybody file in. And we're like barely fitting inside there. We're all like on top of each other, cramped. And she's like, crouch down. And so we're like trying to crouch down, and people are all like on top of each other. And she goes, okay, we're going to be here for about 90 minutes. So settle in. And we're all like, oh, fuck. Like, you know, there's an elbow in my side. Like someone's leg is underneath me. Like shit. So we all start like kind of like shifting around and moving and trying to like find a spot where we're going to be able to survive for the next 90 minutes in this sauna and this hot, like dark, cramped space. So eventually we all are able to kind of like get seated. And we brought this red string with us that had knots in it that we had tied. So we did this exercise in one of our circles before coming to the temple, where you'd run your fingers along the string and visualize kind of the timeline of your life. And then every time that you came across a hard memory or a belief that you picked up that no longer serves you, or something that you just want to let go of, you would essentially tie a knot in that little string. And so it was a closed eye experience. You're just feeling the strings, sensing the journey of your life. And then when you come up across these things where you're like, oof, that was a negative belief, that was something I don't want to perpetuate, this is a pattern that I have, something I want to let go of, you tie a knot. And this really symbolized, you know, letting go and transmuting the pain into power and purpose with our ceremony with Sekhmet, because she is the goddess that really delights in receiving our pain and receiving our darkness and then being able to alchemize it for us. So we're in there and we're doing this, and it's very emotional for a lot of people. But every time I opened my eyes, the statue looked like it had gotten bigger. We're sitting in front of this like black statue of Sekhmet. So she has the, you know, she's the woman, and then she's got the lioness head. And it just felt like every time I opened my eyes to like look around at where we were, the statue was like growing or getting bigger. It was very, very weird. And some of the girls say that it felt like her eyes were kind of like following their gaze. One of the girls said she saw Sekhmet wink at her, like the statue, but like it literally looked like the statue was winking at her. Like it felt like the statue was kind of like coming to life as we were sitting at her feet and doing the ceremony with her. And one of the girls had a really intense conversation with Sekhmet, where Sekhmet was essentially pointing out all of her flaws and kind of taking her limiting beliefs and insecurities that she was thinking about on her string and kind of like amplifying them or like making them worse by saying things like, yeah, but you deserved that and that's who you are. And it was really, really intense for her. But at the end, she realized that what Sekhmet was really doing was kind of showing her the depth of her own shadow and how brutal she can be sometimes in her own self-talk or her own self-beliefs, even on a subconscious level, thinking like, I don't think that of myself. Like a lot of times I think we try to band-aid with the positive beliefs or toxic positivity. And so Sekhmet was like really like, digging deeper with her and showing her like, no, like sometimes you actually feel like this is you. Like you think that you deserve these things. And so she was bringing it all up and out of her and really forcing her to experience the pain of it so that she could then heal it for her and alchemize it, because that's what she does best. And so yeah, that was a really, really cool experience. And then at the end, we were told to kind of walk around the temple and find a spot where we'd love to just tuck our little red string away and kind of like leave all of that pain or challenges or limiting beliefs, things that we wanted to let go of, essentially leaving that physically with Sekhmet in her temple. And so what I did was I kind of like secretly like left my string at her feet, at the feet of the statue, because I was like, I'm gonna let you transmute this. I'm not putting this in the wall somewhere. I'm not going somewhere. Like I'm leaving it right with you, girl. Right with you. There you go. So I left it right at her feet. So, okay, Kamumbo. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Kamumbo temple. The Kamumbo temple represents two gods, actually. So it's Sebek, I hope I'm saying that right, and Horus. And this is known as the temple of choice. So you're essentially choosing between wisdom and wealth. And there are these two entryways, like there's two pillars or gates that you can walk through when you go into the temple. And so we were told before walking in, one of these doorways represents wisdom and one of these doorways represents wealth. Just use your intuition and choose which doorway you want to enter the temple with. And then afterwards we'll tell you like if it was the wisdom or the wealth one. And so I ended up walking through the wisdom side intuitively. A lot of us walked through wisdom, but some people also walked through wealth. And it was just kind of like a curious sort of like intuitive exercise, although I did bring some logic to it. Before we walked in, I was thinking, I'm like, okay, if one of them is wisdom and one of them is wealth, I'm going to say that the left one is wisdom, because the left is associated with the feminine energy and the right is with the masculine energy. And not that these things are inherently like masculine or feminine, like wisdom and wealth, but I just kind of felt like, I feel like the left one would be wisdom with that kind of like more feminine essence. And I feel like the right side would be like the wealth side with a little bit more of masculine energy. And it did actually turn out to be right, not necessarily for those reasons, like who knows, but the left one was wisdom and the right one was wealth. So Sobek, this god Kamumbo is the temple of Sobek and then of Horus. So Sobek is known as the crocodile god, and he represents wealth and essentially the subconscious, kind of like diving deep into the inner work and alchemizing fear. And really what Laura told me about Sobek was like, the reason why he's the crocodile god is because sometimes it's like this representation of the fact that like the thing that you fear the most, once you open up to it, oftentimes becomes your protector or your gateway or, your like the way that you get to that kind of next level of your life. And then we have Horus, the elder, and he represents the divine masculine wisdom and is also believed to be the doctor god or this kind of like healer entity. And so what I thought was really cool was in the middle of this temple, there is a separation line between the two sides. So between the two gods, like you have one side for Sobek and one side for Horus. And then at this one place inside of the temple, there's this clear, separation line. And there is a little hole, kind of like a little portal with Ma'at inside, with goddess Ma'at inside, who is the goddess of truth and justice. And then there's like two ears, human ears, two ears on either side of this little like hole in the wall, this little portal. And so what they told us was there used to be a ramp that would go up to the portal, and this ramp was adorned with like crystals, and this is where patients who were seeking healing could actually come, and they would whisper into the ears of their favorite goddess and be heard. And so the mythology tells us that this is the origin of what eventually turned into confession, what we know in, Christianity and Catholicism. But this idea of, speaking into the ears of God, it was never meant to be a negative communication or sharing about the bad things, but rather just a way to have your needs and your desires heard by the divine. And I thought that was so beautiful. Some other things that we learned about inside of this temple, because there's this element of like the doctor gods. There's a lot of references to medicine and all that kind of stuff. So they told us that in ancient Egypt, like to measure fertility, there was this, it's like an old wives' tale, right? Where you would insert a clove of garlic into the vagina, and then you would wait 6 hours, and then you would smell your breath. And if your breath smelt like garlic, it meant that your fallopian tubes are actually clear. And that was how they would be able to measure, like, if you were fertile, like if you had good fertility, which was crazy. And then they told us about the pregnancy test. So women would be able to pee on wheat. And if the wheat changed color, it meant that the woman was pregnant. So that is like the, oldest pregnancy test. And then they also told us about a test for gender. So they could pee on wheat and barley, and then whichever of those germinated first would be the gender of the baby. So wheat meant that it was a girl if that germinated first, but if the barley germinated first, that meant that it was a boy. So there were so many cool things and so many beautiful, amazing depictions inside of this temple of childbirth and labor and breastfeeding. And yeah, it was just really beautiful to kind of see how ancient and beautiful all of these things are. So this Kamumbo temple, the color of the temple that we were told to wear was green. And I had this green dress. I knew that I was going to do a photo shoot while we were in Egypt, and I had this green dress that I really liked. And so I'm like, I think I'm going to wear this green dress for my photo shoot. And I didn't know that my photo shoot was going to be at the Kamumbo temple, because I didn't find that out until we actually got to Egypt. But it just so happened, it just worked out that that was the temple where we were meant to wear green, and that was the temple where I was going to have my shoot. And so I wore this beautiful green dress to this temple. And I thought that was kind of kismet as well, because of the fact that the Kamumbo temple represents the energy of money and wealth, which is often associated with the color green. And then it also represents wisdom, which is often associated with like trees and trees being green. So that all just kind of like came together and worked out really well. And I'm excited to get my photos back from that shoot and share some of those on socials once I have them. But speaking of trees, we've got to talk about our visit to the Tree of Life. So that started, So our visit to the Tree of Life, it was another really early morning. We had a 3 a.m. wake up to get to the Temple of Isis, or the Philae Temple Complex, which is located on an island in the Nile River in Aswan. So it's completely surrounded by water, and you have to arrive to this temple by boat. So some of you might be familiar with the goddess Isis, but who is she? She's known as the Great Mother. She's the goddess of healing and magic, and she was crucial to ancient Egyptian religious beliefs. So she's known today by her Greek name Isis. However, the ancient Egyptians actually called her Aset, which roughly translates into throne or queen of the throne. So you'll often see her depicted with these really big, beautiful, feathery wings attached to her arms. And the wings symbolize safety because they are depicted as being like outspread. Her arms are outspread and you see those wings. And that's really meant to be like a protective gesture in Egyptian art. And the wings of Isis also reveal her magical ability, which is her resurrective power, her grief, and her protection of the dead. So we arrived to this temple once again in the dark. We sat in ceremony inside this temple for about 90 minutes where we honored our mothers and our fathers and the lineage that we came from. And the women blessed their children, both alive and unborn. The women that, there were moms. And then, this was just like a super, again, special, moving, deep, transformative, beautiful ceremony inside of this temple. And then we emerged to see the sun peeking through the temple archways and, walk around and explore and take photos and do all the things on that temple complex, because it's pretty massive, this temple. So then we took another boat from there to a remote location on the banks of the Nile that I guess not many people apparently know about. Like, it's not a popular like visitation tourist spot, but it's said to be the Tree of Life that is there on the bank of the Nile. So they say that there's very few of these trees of life in the world. I'm not sure how accurate that is, but nonetheless, it was a cool experience. So if you're like, what is the tree of life? The tree of life is a common archetype in a lot of different mythologies and religions and philosophical traditions, Greek, Egyptian, Celtic, and some others, I think Roman even. And it's often related to the concept of the sacred tree. And it can represent many things, including the source of life, a force that connects all life, the cycle of life and death, balance and harmony, and fertility or immortality. I really could not get away from these references to fertility in Egypt, could I? So the tree is actually an acacia tree, and it's considered the tree of life. According to Egyptian mythology, Isis and Osiris were the first couple in the world, and they emerged from this tree of life. So you've probably seen the tree of life in jewelry or like on necklaces before. And when the tree of life is on a piece of jewelry, like it typically represents a link between heaven and earth, and this link that connects all forms of creation, and a symbol of the connection of one another to a greater life force, or this positive earth energy, inspiration, hope, harmony embodied in Mother Nature, like all of these things. And the tree of life can be used as a plant medicine. So you may have heard of this, maybe not, but it's Moringa oleifera. I think I'm saying that right. Also known as the tree of life or miracle tree. And it's classified as a really important herbal plant due to its immense medicinal and non-medicinal benefits. But traditionally, the plant is used to kind of cure wounds, pain, ulcers, liver disease, heart disease, cancer, and inflammation. And apparently, it has a long history of use as a memory-enhancing agent, coupled with antioxidants and neuroprotective properties. So I know it's been used to help people with brain injuries and things like that. But the tree of life also contains a naturally occurring psychoactive substance called ibogaine in its roots and in its bark. And so ibogaine is a psychedelic with dissociative properties that can be administered orally. So you take it orally. Why do people take it? There's some strong advocacy in support of ibogaine really being used to heal certain drug addictions, like addictions to heroin or other opiates, and in some cases even alcohol and cocaine. But like many psychedelics, a lot of people are just in it for the trip and for the kind of profound spiritual experience. So with ibogaine or iboga, some people call it that, people will have these kind of profound visions and spiritual experiences. And it's really known to put you in contact with spiritual entities, with your ancestors, and to have you witness some of your own autobiographical content from your life, almost like a slideshow, or just showing you kind of some of those significant memories, seeing your life sort of in review, like a life in review as a third-party observer, just watching it. And what it's doing, at least for a lot of people, is it's helping them reach a deeper sense of meaning, understanding, healing, or appreciation for what they've been through, alchemizing things, the meaning of life, all of that. So we went and we didn't do the plant medicine, but we just went and we sat with this magical tree, soaking up her energy. We walked barefoot in the mud and the water around her base, and then we sat on her roots and we laid in her branches, and we placed our hands and our foreheads against her trunk and her bark, and we just sat in reverence and just awe and gratitude for the power and the wisdom from this tree of life. And one thing that was really special was that Mel was actually able to breastfeed her son while sitting on the tree of life. And it was kind of this really symbolic and beautiful full circle thing, because she had shared with us that when she sat with the actual plant medicine of the tree of life in a ceremony, she actually received a vision of her future child, which turned out to be her son, who she was now breastfeeding on the tree. And at the time of receiving that vision, she didn't know it, but she was actually pregnant with her son. And then now here she is with her son in the flesh at the actual tree of life, breastfeeding him, sitting on her branches. Like it was just very, very, very full circle. Another interesting tidbit as it relates to nature was the 64 Neteru. And this kind of comes from this idea that tarot is believed to have originated in ancient Egypt. So the 64 Neteru is the pantheon of ancient Egyptian gods and goddesses, each representing a kind of divine cosmic principle. And we were actually able to do this whole workshop with the Neteru, and we had all the cards laid out and we could see all 64 of them. but we learned about how the significance of 64 in the fact that, why are there 64 Neteru? Because there are 64 codons in our human DNA. There are 64 hexagrams in the I Ching. And in numerology, 6 plus 4 equals 10, which reduces down to the 1, which symbolizes oneness or the law of one. And so Neteru is actually the plural of, the word, but the singular form of the word, they say was kind of pronounced sort of like natur, I think. And that's why they believe that this could be the potential origin of the actual word nature. And so in this Neteru deck, there's 8 rows, 8 columns, and 8 cards in each. And then there's 8 families. So the families in the Neteru are the primordials, the heavens, the fire, the moon, the sun, the wind, the earth, and the underworld. So you can see how all of that together like really encapsulates nature. So it's just very curious and interesting how that word is believed to be potentially the origin of the word for nature. Okay, and the last thing that I want to share with you guys is some feminine magnetism in sales that we learned while we were in Egypt. Obviously, we were all business owners there, 6, 7, and 8-figure business owners on this trip. So everything that we experience and see in life is a deeper lesson and shows us something about sales or business in some regard. So of course, we had to take away some lessons. So it was interesting when we went to the first Egyptian healer and to, like the apothecary, he was so genuine with us. And he kept saying, here we're family. And he called all of us my daughter. That's what he referred to us all as. And he was really adamant about, you can touch and you can try anything. You can try any of the oils. You can test any of the perfumes, like smell anything that you like. And for us, we were like, man, and then we all ended up like buying shit inside of this store. So we're like, okay, it definitely worked. Why did it work? He was leading with value, right? He was letting us experience the magic of his work, the oils, the perfumes, he did energy healings on almost all of us. Like he was really allowing us to experience his energy and his gifts before asking us to buy in. And he said, if you buy, you're welcome. And if you don't buy, you are also welcome. And these are the principles that I always try to embody. And I know that so many of us do when it comes to like feminine leadership is leading with value and inviting people into your energy, allowing them to experience who you are, your values. Like this is really what I bring into my free masterclasses is making sure that people get something and they're walking away feeling like that was worth their time. And then of course, always thanking people at the end, regardless of whether they want to work with me or not. I always make a point to thank people for spending the time and taking the energy and the effort to sign up and to come and to sit with me live. Like I really do feel in such deep gratitude for the people that show up to my spaces, whether they choose to buy from me or not. And so it was beautiful to see that exemplified for us in this Egyptian healer experience. And of course, we all bought things. Of course, we were all at the cash register like, yeah, give me 7 oils, give me these perfumes. Like we were, of course, right? Because it works. And then our guide, so Lara was the one who put, the whole thing together and she guided a lot of our ceremonies, but we also had an Egyptian guide and he is an Egyptologist and has been for like 30 plus years. So he was super knowledgeable and his name was Rafat. And Rafat was always saying to us, because he would go to all the places with us and give us cool like facts and all the history lessons of the temples and all of that stuff. And he would always kind of tell us these stories and he would have the microphone on the bus when we were going places and he would start talking to us about what we were going to see or experience. And then he would say, and then the rest of this to be continued on Monday. And it started to become this like running joke that whenever he would get into like a really good juicy part of the story, we would all just kind of like roll our eyes because he would pause. We'd all just roll our eyes and be like, I know he's just going to say to be continued on Monday. Like he always left us on a cliffhanger. And this was another really great example when it comes to sales and business is like protecting the mystery, flirting with your audience. This is what I call the art of withholding. And it's part of feminine magnetism, like not giving it all away in the first encounter and leaving something to be desired, leaving some mystery, kind of building upon people's curiosity. And you can do this in so many ways in your life. You can do this in dating by not revealing everything all on the first date or not giving someone all of yourself or telling all the stories right away. But you can also do this in storytelling or in content creation, like leaving people with a cliffhanger, posting things with no explanation. I think influencers are really good at this sometimes, this like art of flirtation or building curiosity. Like they'll post a photo and there's no text on top, there's no explanation, and it starts the conversation. People are in the comments like, what does this mean? Like, where are you? Blah, blah, blah. And it's because they're not overly giving all of the information, they're sparking that curiosity. And you can also do this by splitting something up into different parts, like a part 1, a part 2, or a part 3. People do this all the time on their TikToks, like to keep people engaged and keep them coming back for more. Obviously, we did that with this Egypt episode, part 1, 2, and 3, right? So it was fun to, just kind of experience like the feminine magnetism and these kind of like sales and storytelling tricks and hacks through the people that we were meeting in Egypt and these Egyptian men and our guides that were just like really embodied in it. So that was very, very cool. So to close, I just want to thank, I really want to thank Lara Mesa for listening to the call to create this sacred journey and to create the Alchemy of Egypt. This was a trip of a lifetime. And I want to thank Mel Wells for inviting me to be a part of this life-changing experience with you and the women from your inner circle and your community. And I want to remind you all that when life starts to feel like a pilgrimage, and you are tired, you are weary, you are feeling emotional, it feels like a lot, just remember that there is so much wisdom and transformation that is taking place. So stay on the path and trust in the alchemy of it all. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and allowing me to share these experiences with you. As always, please share the podcast with a friend who you think would enjoy it, as the best way for us to expand our reach and impact is through word of mouth and recommendations of the podcast. So I love when you guys do that. And if you haven't yet, you can go ahead and leave a cute little 5-star rating on Spotify or Apple, wherever you listen, or on YouTube, and just take 30 seconds maybe to write a short review. If you loved the Egypt series, maybe you just want to shout out that series in your little review. I so appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for your time and attention and allowing me to share these stories and experiences. If you loved these episodes, I would love to hear from you. I know it's different from the typical content that we're doing on the podcast, but I really hope that you enjoyed it. All right, I love you guys, and I will see you next week. Bye.